It was just another night, or so I thought, until my straight roommate got drunk, looked me in the eye, and asked me to stay the night. Not because he needed help. Not because he was sick. But because he didn't want to be alone. And that one simple request changed everything between us forever. It all started like any other day, nothing out of the ordinary, no signs that anything was about to change. We were roommates, best friends even, living together in a small apartment after college. Jake and I had known each other for years, shared classes, late-night study sessions, and more than a few hangovers. He was loud, always cracking jokes, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and instantly make everyone feel at ease. I was quieter, more reserved, the type who listened more than talked, but somehow we balanced each other out. Our friendship just worked. We had this easy rhythm, this unspoken understanding, and I never once thought anything would come between us. Not in a million years. We shared everything, food, Netflix passwords, inside jokes only we understood. Sometimes we'd stay up until 2 a.m. watching old horror movies, laughing at how bad they were, or argue over whose turn it was to do the dishes. There was never any awkwardness, no weird vibes, just two guys hanging out like normal friends. I mean, Jake was straight. Always had been. He dated girls through college, flirted with waitresses, joked about his future wife like it was guaranteed. And me, well, I never made a secret of being gay, but it wasn't something we ever really talked about. It didn't matter. We were friends, and that was enough. But then came that night. The party was at someone's house, not ours, and we both went separately. I got there first, met up with some mutual friends, and by the time Jake showed up, he was already buzzed. He laughed louder than usual, danced like he didn't care who saw, and kept refilling his cup faster than I could keep track. I watched him from across the room, half amused, half worried. He wasn't usually like this. I figured he was just having fun, blowing off steam after a long week. But when he finally stumbled toward me, slinging an arm around my shoulder and pulling me close, I knew he was more than just tipsy. "You good?" I asked, trying to steady him as he nearly tripped over someone's shoe. He grinned, white and sloppy. "Dude, I'm awesome. Like, really awesome." I rolled my eyes. "Okay, let's get you some water before you pass out." He followed me outside without arguing, which should have been my first clue that he was way more drunk than he looked. We sat on the porch steps, the music thumping behind us, and he leaned into me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't mind. Hell, we'd done this 100 times, crashed on each other's shoulders after long nights out. But tonight felt different. His head tilted toward mine, his voice low and almost thoughtful. "Do you ever think about stuff?" He mumbled. "What kind of stuff?" "Like, life, people, why things happen the way they do." I chuckled. "You're wasted." He didn't laugh back, just stared ahead, silent for a beat too long. Then he said, "Sometimes I wonder if I missed something." I turned to look at him, confused. "Missed what?" He shrugged, then suddenly stood up, swaying slightly. "Never mind. Let's go home." I helped him up, supporting his weight as we walked to the car. He didn't say much on the drive back, just hummed along to the radio and occasionally muttered something I couldn't understand. When we got inside the apartment, I led him to his room, half expecting him to fall face first onto the bed and pass out. But instead, he sat down slowly and looked at me. "Will you stay?" he asked, blinking like he was surprised he'd said it out loud. I raised an eyebrow. "Stay? Like, in here?" He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, just until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone right now." It was such a strange request, especially coming from Jake. He was the last person I'd expect to ask for company after a night out. But I didn't question it. I pulled a chair next to his bed and sat down, watching as he curled up under the blanket. "You good?" I asked again, softer this time. He gave me a slow nod, eyes already drooping. "Thanks, man." I stayed until his breathing slowed, until I was sure he was asleep. Then I stood up quietly, careful not to wake him, and walked to the door. Before I left the room, I glanced back. He looked peaceful, like whatever was going on in his head had finally quieted down. I went to my own room and lay awake for a long time, replaying the night in my head. That moment on the porch, the way he looked at me, the way he asked me to stay, none of it made sense. Was it just the alcohol talking? Or was there something else buried underneath? I told myself not to read into it. Jake was drunk. He probably wouldn't even remember asking me to stay by tomorrow. And yet, something about the whole thing lingered. Something I couldn't quite shake. The next morning came like any other, soft sunlight creeping through the blinds, birds chirping outside the window, the smell of coffee brewing from the kitchen. I woke up slowly, still half asleep, expecting the usual sounds of Jake moving around, humming some dumb song while he made breakfast. But something felt off. Not wrong, exactly, just different. Like the air had shifted overnight and I hadn't noticed it yet. I dragged myself out of bed, rubbed my eyes, and walked into the living room. Jake was already there, sitting on the couch with a hoodie pulled over his head, bare feet on the coffee table, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. He looked normal. Too normal. "Morning," I said, leaning against the doorway. He glanced up, gave me that same goofy grin he always did. "Hey man, coffee's ready." I nodded, walking past him toward the kitchen. Something about his tone felt rehearsed, like he was pretending everything was fine when maybe it wasn't. We ate breakfast together like we always did, cereal, toast, some bad jokes about how hungover he probably was. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me more than usual. Every time I looked at him, he'd glance away quickly, like he didn't want me to catch him staring. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe he just had a weird night, got drunk, acted a little strange. People do that sometimes. But then, later that evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, he did something he never really did before. He leaned into me. Just slightly, barely noticeable, but enough for me to feel it. His shoulder pressed against mine, warm and heavy, and for a second, I froze. My heart skipped. I didn't move, didn't say anything, just let it happen, pretending not to notice. But inside, my mind was racing. What did this mean? Why was he doing this now? The show played on, some stupid comedy neither of us were really paying attention to, and after a few minutes, he shifted again, this time resting his head on my shoulder. Completely still. No movement. No reaction. Like he was testing whether I'd push him away. I didn't. Instead, I sat there, stiff and silent, trying to breathe normally, trying not to make this bigger than it probably was. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he just needed a moment. Maybe it meant nothing. But deep down, I knew better. Later that night, as I lay in bed, replaying every small detail, I realized something else. Jake had been asking questions. Subtle ones, almost too quiet to notice, but they were there. "Did I say anything weird last night?" he asked casually while brushing his teeth. "No," I replied, avoiding his gaze in the mirror. "You were just tired." He nodded like he believed me, but I could tell he didn't. There was something behind his eyes, confusion, maybe even regret. Or maybe curiosity. I couldn't tell which one scared me more. Then, a few days later, during another movie night, it happened again. We were sitting side by side on the couch, eating pizza, laughing at some dumb scene, when suddenly he reached over and playfully nudged me. The kind of gesture friends do all the time. But this time, he didn't pull his hand back right away. Instead, he left it there, resting on my shoulder, warm and unmoving, like he wanted to see what I'd do. I didn't react, just kept watching the screen, pretending I hadn't felt it. Pretending I wasn't holding my breath. And then, the next night, I heard him talking. Late, from behind his door. He thought I was asleep, so he didn't bother keeping his voice low. "I don't know, maybe I'm confused." That's all he said. Just those few words, mumbled into his pillow like he was trying to convince himself. But they hit me like a punch to the gut. I stayed awake for hours after that, lying there in the dark, wondering what the hell was happening between us. Wondering if I was misreading everything. Wondering if I was falling into something I should have stayed far away from. Jake had always been straight. Always. So why now? Why me? Why did he keep pulling me closer, only to act like nothing was happening? I told myself not to think about it. Told myself to forget it. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure, whatever this was, it wasn't over. And I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. The days that followed felt like walking on glass, every step careful, every word measured, as if one wrong move could shatter everything we had. I started noticing things I hadn't before, the way Jake looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, the way his voice softened when he said my name, the way he lingered just a second too long whenever our hands brushed by accident. It was subtle, but it was there. And it was driving me insane. I tried to keep my distance. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. If I let myself get pulled in any further, I knew I wouldn't be able to stop. And if this turned out to be nothing, just some drunken curiosity or confusion, I didn't know if I'd survive it. Jake noticed. Of course he did. Why are you pulling away? He asked one evening, catching me off guard as I tried to slip past him into the kitchen. I froze, pretending to look for something in the fridge even though I wasn't hungry. What do you mean? He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like he was trying to read between the lines. You've been weird lately. Like, avoiding me. I sighed, finally meeting his eyes. Maybe I just need some space. His expression shifted, not hurt exactly, but something close to it. Is it about the other night? When I asked you to stay? My heart clenched. He remembered. Of course he did. No, I said quickly, maybe too quickly. It's not that. He studied me for a long moment, then stepped closer. Then what is it? I didn't answer. I couldn't. How do you explain something you don't understand yourself? How do you tell your best friend, your straight best friend, that you're terrified of what might be happening between you, because if it turns out to be nothing, you'll lose more than just a potential relationship? He didn't push, not right then. But he didn't stop either. Over the next few days, he kept finding ways to pull me back in. Small touches became longer. Jokes became flirtatious, almost teasing. One night, while we were watching a movie, he stretched out on the couch and, without saying anything, rested his head in my lap. Just like that. No warning. No hesitation. I sat frozen, unsure whether to move or stay still. My hand hovered above his shoulder, caught between instinct and self-preservation. You okay? He mumbled, eyes closed, like this was completely normal. Yeah, I whispered, forcing my voice to sound steady. Just, surprised. He chuckled, the vibration from his chest sending a shiver through me. Relax, dude. I'm just tired. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I couldn't ignore the way my pulse raced, how my breath hitched every time he shifted slightly, how my brain screamed at me to stop letting this happen. Eventually, I forced myself up, gently moving his head onto a pillow. I should go to bed, I muttered, already walking away before he could say anything. But later that night, after I'd climbed into bed and tried to clear my head, I heard him talking again. Low, quiet, almost desperate. I don't know, maybe I'm confused. Again, the same words. Only this time, they hit harder. Because now I knew, this wasn't just a drunk moment. This wasn't just a fluke. There was something real behind it. Something neither of us understood yet. And I hated how much I wanted to know what it was. The next day, I broke. I couldn't take it anymore. We were sitting in the kitchen, eating breakfast like always, when I finally said it. That night, I started, voice low, hesitant. Was it real? Or were you just drunk? Jake stopped chewing. His eyes flicked to mine, searching for something, maybe an escape route, maybe confirmation that I was feeling the same thing. He swallowed slowly, then set his spoon down. I didn't plan to do it, he admitted. But I liked being close. I stared at him, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. He continued, quieter now. I'm not gay, but I felt something different. My throat tightened. I wanted to say something, anything, but my mouth was dry, my thoughts tangled in a mess of fear and hope. Finally, I managed to whisper, have you ever thought about us? He hesitated. Just for a second, but it was enough. Once, he admitted. A long time ago. But I pushed it away. I laughed softly, bitterly. Me too. He looked surprised. Really? I nodded, staring at my hands. I buried it. Because you were always straight. Always. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, what if I'm not? I looked up at him, searching his face for answers he didn't have. What if I'm not? He repeated, almost like he was trying it out for the first time. What if this, whatever it is, means something? I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that my heart was breaking and building itself again all at once. I don't know, I admitted. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine lightly, like he was testing the waters. I didn't pull away. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a phase. Maybe it wasn't just confusion. Maybe it was something real. And maybe, just maybe, I was falling for my best friend. It started like any other night. We were alone in the apartment, the city outside humming softly behind closed windows. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching it. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, pretending to be absorbed in whatever show we'd put on, but the silence between us felt heavier than usual, charged, almost electric. Jake had been quiet all evening. Not moody, not angry, just thoughtful. He kept looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, his gaze lingering just long enough for me to notice. It made my skin prickle. Made my chest feel tight. I wanted to ask him what was going on inside his head, but I was scared of the answer. Then, out of nowhere, he stood up and walked over to my side of the couch. He didn't sit back down. Just hovered there, arms crossed, staring at the floor like he was trying to find the right words. Can we talk? He asked, voice low. I nodded slowly. Of course. He hesitated again, then finally met my eyes. I've been thinking about it non-stop, he said. About us. My breath caught. I nodded slowly. I don't know what this means, he admitted. But I can't stop thinking about you. About how I feel when you're near me. I swallowed hard, unsure if I should speak or just let him keep going. He sat down beside me, close enough that our knees touched. His hands rested on his thighs, fingers twitching like he was nervous. Maybe he was. Maybe I was more nervous. I need to understand, he continued. I don't want to pretend anymore. I stared at him, heart hammering in my chest. Understand what, Jake? His lips parted slightly, like he was choosing his next words carefully. Then, without warning, he turned toward me, slow, deliberate, and leaned in. At first, I thought he was going to say something else. But, instead, he kissed me. It was soft, light, barely more than a brush of his lips against mine. But it hit me like a wave crashing into the shore, sudden, powerful, impossible to ignore. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. My body refused to move. And then, just as quickly, he pulled back, eyes wide, like he was waiting for me to react. To tell him he'd gone too far. I didn't. Instead, I just looked at him, searching his face for answers, for regret, for anything. He swallowed. I don't know why I did that, he whispered. But I don't hate it. That's when reality crashed back in. I pushed myself back slightly, putting a little distance between us. Jake, I started, voice barely above a breath. You don't even know what this means. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I know. That's the problem. We sat there for a moment, silence stretching between us like a thin thread, ready to snap. Then he stood up suddenly, pacing the small space in front of the couch. "I don't know what I am," he said, almost to himself. "I've never felt this before. Not with anyone. Not even close." I watched him, unsure whether to feel hopeful or terrified. He stopped pacing and looked at me again. "But I know that when I'm with you, I feel different. Like, lighter. Or maybe just, real." I didn't know what to say. So I just sat there, letting his words sink in, feeling every one of them settle deep in my chest. Then, after a long pause, he muttered, "I don't regret it." And just like that, the room shifted again. He took a step closer, then another, until he was standing right in front of me. I looked up at him, unsure of what he wanted, what he expected. And then he reached down and took my hand. Not in a friendly way. Not in a brotherly way. In a way that sent shivers up my spine. I didn't pull away. Instead, I squeezed his fingers lightly, silently telling him that I understood. That I felt it too. That I didn't want to lose this moment, even if it meant risking everything. But then, just as quickly, he let go. "I should go," he mumbled, stepping back. I nodded, throat tight. "Okay." He hesitated for just a second longer, then turned and walked down the hallway, disappearing into his room without another word. I sat there for a long time after that, replaying the kiss over and over in my head. How it felt. How it changed everything. I knew I should have been scared. I knew I should have been preparing myself for the possibility that this was just a phase, just a mistake. But all I could think about was how much I wanted to do it again. The next few days were filled with silence. Not because we were avoiding each other, but because we didn't know how to act. There was an unspoken tension now, thick and heavy, always present. We still talked, still laughed, still lived together like normal. But everything felt different. Jake didn't bring it up. Neither did I. Until he texted me late one night. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying. A few minutes later, he knocked on my door. I opened it slowly, heart already racing. He stepped inside without a word, closing the door behind him. Then he turned to face me, eyes serious. "I don't regret it," he said again, louder this time. "But I don't know how to handle it." I exhaled, nodding. "Me either." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking torn. "I don't know if I'm gay," he admitted. "But I know I want to explore this. With you." I stared at him, stunned. He stepped closer. "If that's okay with you." I didn't hesitate. "It is." And just like that, the wall between us cracked completely. We moved toward each other slowly, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. When his hands found my face, I leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering shut. And then, without another word, he kissed me again. This time, it wasn't hesitant. This time, it was real. His lips pressed harder against mine, his fingers tangling in my hair as he pulled me closer. I kissed him back, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. It was messy and desperate and beautiful all at once. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together. "I don't care what I am," he whispered. "I only care about how I feel with you." I smiled, tears threatening to spill over. "That's enough for now." And in that moment, it really was. Because whatever this was, whatever we were becoming, it was real. And I wasn't going to let it slip away. Time passed like it always does, quietly, without warning. Days turned into weeks, and somehow, we just kept going. Not perfectly, not without pain, but together. There were still moments when Jake pulled away, not physically, not angrily, but emotionally. Nights where he'd sit on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, lost in thoughts he wouldn't share. I learned not to push too hard during those times. Instead, I stayed close. Let him know I was there. And eventually, he always came back. Sometimes he'd say things that made my heart ache. "I don't think I'm gay," he'd admit, voice quiet, almost apologetic. But I also don't care if people think I am. And I believed him. Because even though he wasn't ready to label himself, he never hid us. He didn't flinch when our hands brushed in public. He didn't pull away when I reached for him. He didn't make excuses when people asked questions. He just held my hand a little tighter and said, "This is who I choose to be with." That meant more than any label ever could. We had our good days, the kind where everything felt effortless. We'd wake up tangled in each other's arms, laugh over breakfast, spend hours talking about everything and nothing. We'd walk through the city like we owned it, shoulders bumping, fingers intertwined. But we also had our bad days. The ones where doubt crept in and whispered ugly things in my ear. The ones where I wondered if I was setting myself up for heartbreak. If I was loving someone who would one day look back and wonder why he ever let himself fall this far. Jake noticed those days. He always did. One evening, after a long silence between us, he sat down beside me on the couch and took my hand. "You're scared," he said, not as a question, but as a fact. I nodded. "I don't want to lose you." He leaned his forehead against mine. "You won't. But what if you realize this isn't real?" I whispered. "What if one day you wake up and decide I was just a phase?" He was quiet for a moment before answering. "Maybe I'll never have all the answers," he admitted. "Maybe I'll always feel confused about what this makes me. But I know how I feel when I'm with you. And I know I don't want to lose that." His thumb brushed across my cheek, gentle and sure. "You're not a phase," he said softly. "You're the person I want to figure this out with." I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in, letting them fill the spaces where fear used to live. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Because love doesn't always come with labels. Sometimes it sneaks in quietly, unexpected and uninvited. Sometimes it grows slowly, in stolen glances and lingering touches. And sometimes, the person you fall for is the one you never saw coming. I used to think I needed certainty. Needed promises. Needed guarantees that this was real. But now I understand, real love isn't about having all the answers. It's about choosing to stay, even when you don't. So here we are, still figuring things out, still learning, still falling, but together. And that's all I've ever wanted. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button. It really helps support content like this. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another emotional journey like this one. And if you've ever experienced unexpected feelings for someone close to you, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.